Howdy ho, and welcome to another installment of What's Your Favorite Movie, the podcast that dares to ask the question, hey, what's your favorite movie? It's Ed South with you, and we're ready to talk some movies with another buddy of mine. And please, folks, take a moment and follow us on Twitter at WYF Movie Podcast. You will be so glad you did. Well, for today's show, we're reaching all the way across the other side of the country from where we record here in Pennsylvania. And we're welcoming our good friend Ron to the show. Ron, how are you?
I'm doing great, Ed. How are you?
Excellent.
Good to hear your voice.
Well, thank you. Yes, and good to hear you too. Ron's out in the Bay Area, as they say in California, San Francisco Bay Area. What comprises the Bay Area? San Francisco, the Bridge, anything else?
The area is surrounded. So basically, Berkeley, Oakland. Excuse me. Actually, there's a town called Oakley too, which is.
Is that where the sunglasses come from?
No, it's actually where a lot of feed stores come from.
Feed stores?
Yeah, it's pretty much where the suburbs of the Bay Area start to meet the farmlands as you're kind of moving into more of the Sacramento area, which is where I think they say the majority of all the produce in the country is grown. So I live basically near all the farming areas where they grow all those delicious avocados and oranges and all that good stuff.
Guacamole.
Yeah, baby.
So Ron and I know each other from high school, which we've had some other friends from high school on. And I also wanted to say on the show, for anyone listening who doesn't necessarily know me, I feel like by having so many high school people, and people might get the impression that like this is like Wayne's World, where I live in my parents' basement and everybody still lives in the same town that we lived in 20 years ago. But we actually went to a private school where everybody kind of came from different areas, and I now live about an hour and a half from that school. And Ron's, of course, in two days car travel or whatnot across the country. More than 2 days.
More than an hour and a half.
Yeah. So, so Ron and I know each other from high school, but we have a funny connection, kind of, and you have a good story that involves a movie, so we thought it would be appropriate. Would we call this your first date, that this movie story of ours?
I think that was actually my first date. Short Circuit.
Short Circuit with
Westminster, Maryland.
With Steve Guttenberg and Ali Sheedy and the Robot. So
I don't think I've seen the movie since. I probably couldn't tell you much about it.
I've seen that movie 100 times. You need to rewatch Short Circuit.
I think I'll have to. I forgot that Steve Guttenberg was even in it.
Wow.
I work in a hotel in San Francisco, and he came into my bar one night.
Nice.
A couple years ago, and let's just say Steve Guttenberg doesn't look much like the guy that we remember from.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's had a little bit of work done. He still looks youthful.
I've heard that he does not rightly like to talk about Police Academy too much because he feels people are.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
One thing I've learned about when working in an environment where you can brush up against celebrities and possibly have conversations with them, I would never talk to them about what it is they're famous for, because you have to assume that that's probably what everybody is
Right.
And you don't want to get on their nerves. So, like, for example, one night I had the drummer from Metallica come sit in the bar.
Excellent.
And we got to chatting, and I remember when I was a kid that MTV was doing this thing on what these guys do when they're not working, what they'd like to do for fun when
right.
they're, not boring. And
right.
I remember that Lars Ulrich was a huge scuba diving enthusiast.
Look at you.
I lived in Southern California for a while, and I got into diving when I was living there, and then I moved out to Maui for a little while where I did a lot of diving. So I was able to talk to him about scuba diving.
Excellent.
And you could tell that he kind of lit up a little bit
right.
when I talked to him about that, versus, inundating him with questions about touring and Metallica and music and all that stuff. Yeah, I just knew that wasn't going to fare well, so...
that was your
Yeah, I can imagine that Steve Guttenberg probably doesn't want to talk about his career, because that's the only thing that people remember him from.
Right.
In fact, when you mentioned that he was in Short Circuit, I totally forgot he was in it. I just remember there was a robot.
Poor Steve Guttenberg. Well, there's few celebrities that if I ran into, I would light up as much as I would Steve Guttenberg, because I absolutely adore the Police Academy films. So that would be, that would be hard for me not to ask of anything about Police Academy. But good point. If you ever run into somebody famous, folks, don't ask them about what they're famous for.
Well, also working in the food and beverage industry as well, it's just kind of a known thing. You don't approach celebrities anyway.
Yeah.
But though I work in the bar aspect of things, so there are times when I actually do get to engage with famous people.
Yeah.
But I always just try to be on my P's and Q's. You just the less you say, probably the better they are. They really actually like to appreciate you just not even treating them anything special,
because they're off. So
exactly.
Getting back to our story real quick. So Short Circuit is 1986, I want to say. So you went on a date with this young lady and went and saw the movie. Then we'll flash forward maybe 4 or 5 years, and you had moved out of that area of the state and moved like an hour away. And you and I met in high school, and we were in homeroom together. I remember.
Sure.
And since I guess we sat near each other because our last names are close in alphabetical order or whatever. So we talked every morning for how long? You're like 2 or 3 years, 2.5 years, and
3 years. Yeah, I joined that. I joined the class of '91 in the 10th grade.
Excellent.
And then we were all together from the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade.
And I remember most of all, but I don't remember why you and I referred to each other as Gilligan and Little Buddy, or Gilligan and the Skipper, or Skipper and Little Buddy.
Yeah, Gilligan and Little Buddy.
Yeah.
Hey, Skipper. Yeah. Well, I think that, it's one of the things that we realized we had in common was that we were enthusiasts of of the screen, regardless of TV or movies, But I think that you and I mainly would just joke about that kind of stuff.
I would imagine my body type had something to do with it as well, as I'm very Skipper-esque.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't remember. Well, I'm just going to say then you started it. No, and I was a big Pee Wee Herman enthusiast too. So I was known for being able to do a pretty immaculate Pee Wee Herman imitation.
Is that still?
I don't know if that was a part of our little shtick or not.
Is that still in you? Is the Pee Wee still in you?
It is, but it requires it takes me out of breath now. Like, so I have to actually be really willing to do it.
Much as it does Paul Rubens now. He's looking.
Say that again?
I said, much as it does Paul Rubens, he looks like he's having a little trouble hanging on to the Pee Wee, but.
Well, I don't know. Did you see the new one?
I did.
I thought it was. I liked it. I thought it was funny. I thought the jokes were actually pretty solid. When I go back to watch, like, say, Pee Wee's Big Adventure, it's more like I relish it just more for nostalgia.
Exactly.
But, I believe that Judd Apatow was somehow involved in the new one.
In the new one, yeah, he produced it at least.
Yeah, so I felt like there was some real jokes in there, and I don't know. I have kids now, so I got them into it.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure is flawless, almost. Like every scene is a classic, and every line is so wonderful.
Absolutely.
And I felt the new one was maybe a little bit trying to just rehash that somewhat. It did have some good funny parts, but I mean, what do you get for 2016? It's a pretty good effort.
I thought it was a great effort.
Yeah, awesome. And we're dragging our story out. The bottom line, folks, is what 20 years later or whatever it was, through Facebook, we discover that my wife went on that date with Ron back in 1986 because she was like, "How do you know Ronnie from?" And I was like, "What? Who's Ronnie?" First of all, I know Ron, and she's like, "Oh, Ronnie," and blah blah blah. So
that date, I mean, not to, we'll try to keep the story as positive as we can, but why not share a little bit of realism?
Sure.
With, what had happened, but my mother passed away shortly after that.
Right.
And as a result, that's the reason why I had left the area. I went to go live with my dad, who lived down closer to Baltimore, and then that's how I kind of evaporated out of that life. So,
right.
But it's funny that we brought up the Pee Wee's Big Adventure because I watched that movie for the first time the day after my mom passed away.
Oh my goodness!
To this day, I accredit that movie with being like some sort of therapy, or it helped get me through it.
Right. If I can dive into some movie psychology here for a minute, and so you've seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure several times since.
Oh yeah.
So is it hard for you to watch that? Like, does that instantly connect you?
No, not at all. Because it was like it was always like it took away the pain.
Yeah.
And it doesn't in any way trigger the pain. That is such
it's
like a lifetime ago.
Well, I was going to say that movie is almost perfect for that kind of a scenario. Like not a heavy. It's not obviously not heavy at all, but just like a nice, clean, comforting feeling.
Absolutely.
And that's great.
Pee Wee Herman was just such a unique, character.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you not be enthralled with that character? I mean, I don't care how old you are.
Yeah.
He's just so different and fun. And
where do you stand on Big Top Pee Wee? I never hear anyone give any love for Big Top Pee Wee.
I'm not a fan. I mean, I think at a point in my life I wanted to like it just because I had to like everything Paul Rubens. But it hasn't stood the test of time. I haven't felt inclined to have my children watch it. We haven't toyed around with the idea of owning it, or I have never screened it for the kids. So that tells you right there kind of how I felt about it.
I didn't
like the fact that his love interest didn't like egg salad sandwich.
Oh, that's...
Or no, he didn't like egg salad sandwich.
That's true.
She liked, and that kind of bugs me because I enjoy a good egg salad sandwich.
As do I, with some Old Bay on it, if I may recommend.
Old Bay, baby. I'm always representing out here in California. There's always a can in the cupboard.
Nice.
Always.
So what kind of films have you introduced your kids to? Can they handle something a little heavier than Pee-wee if you try to go nostalgic on them, or?
Well, that's one of my pride and joys in my life is that how well-rounded my kids are. I have a 12-year-old son, but he lives with his mother because she's an ex. But I have 3 little girls in my house now, 8, 7, and just turned 4. And those kids are amazing because, and I know that I'm about to probably upset some people, but it's not uncommon for when I'm saying, hey, let's pick out a movie where the 7-year-old wants to watch Shining.
Well,
the only reason why I say no is because it's 9 o'clock and if we screen The Shining, we're not getting kids to bed till midnight.
Right.
So they.
Who's this? The 7-year-old? The 7-year-old?
They all love it. I mean,
hats off to them because
for whatever reason, my daughters they can watch a horror movie and not have it scare them.
I think
there was only one time in the beginning when I thought it would be okay to watch Beetlejuice with kids. Because I don't really see Beetlejuice as a scary movie.
Exactly, yeah.
And there's a scene in there where the character throws a glance and there's a cockroach, I think sitting in the corner, with its legs crossed, in a chair or something like that.
Yeah.
And then that cockroach scared my daughter.
Oh.
To the point where I was in hot water with the wife.
Uh-oh.
And but then after that, I don't even know what happened, but somehow we watched something that was scary and we just kind of ran with it. And sometimes my 4-year-old will ask to watch The Conjuring. So, but right now they're watching. I think they're out in the living room right now watching one of the Alice in Wonderland installments.
Oh, okay.
The one that just came out on Netflix.
Yeah.
The number 2.
Through the Looking Glass or something like that.
So. And then they'll watch, that kind of stuff, and My Little Pony, and Strawberry Shortcake. But then, they'll also watch The Shining. So that's kind of how the range. That's how the spectrum goes in our house.
That's awesome. My boys, who are now 13 and 10, or maybe 11, I shouldn't. They were much more susceptible to watching whatever Daddy put on for them when they were younger. Now, now they're too, I don't want to watch that kind of stuff. So I was trying to get them to watch Better Off Dead the other night, and they didn't want to. They didn't want to have anything. Yeah, I know they'll like it, and whenever I show them something that I know they'll like, they do like it. I've very rarely been wrong, but
right.
Oh well, good times.
I know. What are you gonna do?
Exactly.
No, and don't get me wrong though. I mean, allowing my kids to watch The Shining is, that does get some people like to raise their eyebrows a little bit, but that doesn't mean that we just let the kids watch anything.
Yeah,
I would never let them watch something like, those what are those movies where like it's like they call it like torture porn,
like Saw,
or something like that. With I don't even remember the name of it.
Saw,
the one with the creepy clown character.
Yeah.
Or like Hostel or something like that.
Yeah.
Super violent, no way.
Yeah, I mean the ratings are there. People forget the ratings are there as a parental guidance. So just because something is rated R or PG-13 and your kid's not 13 doesn't mean they can't watch it or even shouldn't watch it. It means you should be aware. Yeah, you should be aware. So hats off to you and the kids for going.
The only rules of thumb is we don't try to avoid obviously you don't want to expose your young daughters to explicit sexual content, and anything that's super violent, obviously. The Shining's a scary movie and there is a little violence in it, but if you compare that to a lot of the movies today,
exactly,
it's not really all that violent at all,
Yeah. Well, let's get to some of the movies you bring into the table here for what's your favorite movie. Ron just spit out a bunch of titles, and I wrote them all down and said, hey, let's go with it. So we'll see how many we get through. And I think you gave me 15, and of that 15, I had seen maybe 3 of them. So, but the first one on your list was Hugo from 2011. Mm-hmm. Tell us about Hugo. Now, when I saw the trailer for this the first time, it just looked, I don't know, to me it looked very, like it didn't register with me. It just looked very dry and like, kid movie, steampunk English kid movie. But but tell us a little bit about Hugo as far as the story goes.
I'm a diehard Martin Scorsese fan.
Yeah.
And I was just intrigued at the notion that he was putting out a movie that wasn't, some kind of shoot 'em up,
right?
Like The Departed or, something violent.
This was 2011, and this was his first PG film in like 18 years that he had done.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, well, the movie, it just was it just looked beautiful, and I'm the kind of guy that I'm going to love all things Scorsese. So if he puts his name on it, I've got it. I have to go see it.
Awesome.
And this movie just moved me. It moved me. It was just beautiful. I mean, it I think you and I can appreciate. Well, I don't know if you've ever seen when you go to the movies. Sometimes they show like these little commercials beforehand, like the Will Rogers Institute.
Sure.
But there's been one that Scorsese does where he's basically trying to raise awareness for the preservation of film archive.
Now, see, that's a California thing where you get that kind of stuff. We don't get that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. We don't get that kind of. We get the Will Rogers but not the film preservation. But that's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that was something that was a regional thing. Well, so Scorsese has this foundation that he does, where it's basically trying to preserve film stock, like this, especially film stock that's old and starting to fall apart. And I've always loved film, and when you watch this movie, it really ties into the history behind it, because it's loosely based on a true story about George Méliès, who was an old filmmaker, and what's his name, Sir Ben,
the actor.
Yeah.
Ben Kingsley. Ben Kingsley. Yeah.
Sir Ben. Whenever I try to throw that "sir" in there, it throws me off. Sir Ben Kingsley. He plays George Méliès.
Okay.
And and in the story, because in our current time, we love film.
Right.
But what we don't realize, and the way that Scorsese depicts the story, he brings it to your attention that when film was first invented, it was kind of treated like it was just a shtick.
Okay.
And it wasn't going to be a viable medium, and it was just going to be a flash in the pan. It was just going to come and it was going to go, and they didn't see it as something that was going to be like a viable, industry.
Right.
And then on top of that, when we went to war, they took all the film and they melted it down.
Yikes.
And basically, the film industry just completely went away.
Right.
You know, and I just thought that was a really interesting piece of history, just for the fact that, you know, film has become such a big part of our lives now. To me, it's almost unfathomable to even think that is a medium that almost just fell by the wayside.
Right, right.
You know, then you add to that there was just some real talent in that movie, too. I mean, the little boy was great, and Sacha Baron Cohen, actually, I thought he stole the show.
Yeah.
He's
I read he did the movie solely just to work with Martin Scorsese, which I would imagine almost every actor that gets offered does it.
Right. It's a pipe dream.
Yeah. Amazing.
That's a sign that you've made it, kind of thing. In fact, I believe on a side note that like Jonah Hill did something similar when he did The Wolf of Wall Street.
Uh-huh.
He took like a salary of like $40,000 just because he so badly wanted to be in the movie.
Yeah.
And if you notice too, you'll see that a lot of these kind of cult directors, I call them cult directors, they have a tendency to work with, you know, the same actors over time, and so trying to get into that club,
yeah,
you know, it's good for your resume, but also could be good for you getting more work down the road with that guy.
Funny you bring. This was also another statistic of first. This was Scorsese's first film without Leonardo DiCaprio that he had done in 12 years. So he had used
really?
DiCaprio in every film. Bringing Out the Dead was the last one that didn't have him in it, and that was late 90s. Yeah. So that's cool. Well, I wish the trailer had made it more clear that it was about the film industry, or I probably would have been there, you know, opening week. But that Hugo is on Netflix right now, folks. So as we as we were recording,
and you know, there's been a couple times where as soon as the credits have rolled in a movie, where I just completely just pointed at the screen and said, "That guy's getting an Oscar."
Yeah.
And I actually did that with Scorsese's The Departed.
Nice.
As soon as that movie rolled, I was just like, that guy's getting an Oscar. And then that was the year that he got his first Oscar.
Cool.
And then when Hugo came around, same thing. I was just like, oh, he's getting an Oscar for this.
Yeah.
And I don't remember which is which. One was where it was like he got Best Film, and then the other was Best Director.
Oh, yeah. I didn't write those down. But next on your list, we'll race through some of these here. You have a movie called Barry Lyndon from 1975, which I was like, oh, that's like a Dustin Hoffman romantic comedy. And then I looked it up, and it's actually a 3-hour 18th century English drama. So, but
incredible movie.
Another big director behind this one, Mr. Stanley Kubrick.
You know, it's funny. Not too long ago, I watched the name of it's escaping me right now, but it's a documentary that you can watch where these guys that basically go through The Shining, and they point out all these Easter eggs.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things that they talked about with Kubrick was that supposedly he's one of the smartest human beings that you will ever meet if you ever had the chance to meet him. The guy, apparently his IQ was like coming up on 200 or something like that.
Okay.
And it's funny that I listed this movie on here because when I watched this movie, it was just beautiful. I mean, the cinematography was beautiful. Ryan O'Neal is just this really good-looking leading man who I'd never seen before in a movie, you know, and it had just this really interesting arc. It was a story where you watched a man who was kind of poor navigate his way up the ranks of the aristocratic, only to eventually mess it up and then land right back to where he was, which was poor again, but in worse shape. And the story was just such a full circle, kind of almost like a karma, if you want to call it karma.
Right.
That the story itself was compelling. But you know, I'm a photographer, you know, in my own personal life as well. So I love good framing. I love good cinematography.
Oh, that's awesome.
This movie was it was gorgeous. I mean, there was a scene in there that was so cool where Ryan O'Neal and the female in the movie was in a horse carriage. Okay. And it was so perfectly shot. I was just like, wow, if I was to say, be a fashion photographer, like, you know, for the magazine
Sure.
or something like that. At some point, I'm gonna have to tap into this. I'm gonna have to use this scene as some form of inspiration, you know, to create some imagery. That's how awesome it was. But ironically, getting back to this documentary that these guys were, like, you know, analyzing Kubrick, they claimed that, you know, he was still, you know, he basically had created some really good work before this movie came out, and that they claimed that this movie was his most boring movie.
This one here, Barry Lyndon.
And that he had actually made a boring movie on purpose because he was trying to let the world know how bored he was. And that kind of bummed me out when I heard that, because I was like, well, I must be a simpleton, because I absolutely love this movie, and I would say that I like it better than any other Kubrick film. I mean, I like all his work, but this one, for whatever reason, I guess it was just because it was unique and you know, it's fresh to me. So, you know, it's all in the eye of the beholder.
Exactly. But that's awesome that you're able to extract the, you know, the framing and the artistic side of it. It lets you enjoy the film on a whole other level. And
I'll tell people, watch this movie, but if you hate it, I'm sorry.
My bad. I just taped or recorded. I still say taped. Recorded 2001 off of Turner Classic the other night. I haven't watched it yet. I haven't seen it since I was a kid. But
well, I want to hear what you have to say about it, because I watched it when I was a kid, and it bored me to tears.
Well, I think it did too, but I remember, this is going so way back, like before we probably even had cable TV, but they simulcasted on the radio so that you could listen to it in stereo, because there was no such thing as stereo TVs. So I remember putting it on, and my dad had the stereo cranked up in the dining room, and, you know, the dun, 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 and yeah, I don't remember much beyond the listening to it on the stereo, but I do want to check it out.
What this movie does, and I won't get too into it, because, I mean, it obviously wasn't a movie I put on my list, but it again, this movie exemplifies Kubrick's ability to frame really well. Like, just as far as the, just literally like the nuts and bolts of a good photograph, as far as, you know, composition and leading the eye and color palette, and all these things that you get into when you go to school for photography, which, I mean, we don't need to get too into that, but you'll see that this guy he could frame. He could frame
awesome.
really well. It's for some reason really important to me. And the thing is, I noticed that some of the best framing in that entire movie was actually in the beginning, before they go to the spacecraft, where it's just that guy Dave with the talking computer, Hal.
Right.
Before that, there's some scenes in there where it's a weird movie. It evokes a lot of emotion. I find the movie to be actually very frightening, but in a way that I can't explain it. But if it evokes emotion, then obviously the movie did its job.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. What's that?
I'd be curious to hear what you have to say about after you watch it, because, like I said, when I was a kid, I hated it, and then I watched it, I think, for the first time since I was a kid, like maybe 5 years ago, and I was just blown away by how good it was.
Well, technically,
so I hope you have the same effect.
Technically, I'm not a kid anymore, although my movie taste tend.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You're still a kid.
A lot of times, because I watch so many comedies and I love parody and satire and stuff like that, I know elements of 2001 are heavily in Airplane 2, which I could recite word for word. So I'm looking forward to seeing stuff that I know from Airplane and having it explained to me, okay, this is what they were doing there. So let's move on. We're moving slowly through the list, but that's okay. You also mentioned Snatch, which has been mentioned several times on the show, which should be an indicator for me to watch it. Let's breeze over that unless you had anything super duper you wanted to add to Snatch.
It's just a good, witty crime film. It's not, it's not like an intellectual movie. You're not going to walk away from it, a changed person.
Right.
It's just fun. It's just a fun movie. I really enjoy the way that they edited that movie. That was a young Jason Statham, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the only movie that I've enjoyed with him in it, because everything that he's done after that, the Transporter and all these
right.
silly. But Snatch was where we first saw him. There's a young Brad Pitt in there there as well, and it's just an English gangster movie,
right?
And as far as I'm concerned, it's just fun. There's really nothing else you really need to say about it.
I will add, though, to plug the back catalog of the podcast, that our friend Sam from high school talked about it in a little bit of length in episode 12 of the podcast. So go back and check that out, ladies and gentlemen in the audience. Next on your list, a movie I've seen, one of I think the three that I've seen, and we've all seen probably, Inside Out, from our good friends at Pixar.
Oh, such a good movie.
Yeah, it is definitely their return to form after a couple of sequels and lesser films. But yeah, and I think you'll agree with me that it really has a whole nother layer if you are a parent. Obviously, it really, especially the end, really and I guess even maybe if you're a parent to a girl, I guess that adds a little bit to it. But yeah, it just really goes in for the jugular there at the end with the with the tears. But a really
absolutely, it's a colorful movie. It's well animated. It's absolutely stunning. The story is just, in my opinion, is as good as storytelling gets.
Yeah.
But really, what I took away from this was just this deep, introspective look into the psyche of human nature, and it kind of brings to light how things in our childhood can really screw us up,
mm-hmm.
and especially if you have inattentive parenting, or you have something where these little neuroses that you get created, they go unchecked, could really lead to an adult life of just unhappiness. And it was just really interesting to see how basically, if you haven't seen the movie's I know you've seen it, but just saying to your audience that it's each of the emotions in your brain, whether it be fear or jealousy or anger or happiness or sadness, each one of those emotions have been given their own separate character, which was obviously voiced by its own separate actor.
Right, various comedian comics.
Right. This movie just allows you to see, like, how second guessing works, and how sadness might try to talk happiness out of, saying that it's more important to be sad about this than happy. And just to see, like, how as humans, we all experience this feeling sometimes where our emotions get pulled in a million different directions. And this actually gave a really cool, interesting, yet poignant context to how that works. Psychology has always been something that I love. Being in the food business, the restaurant business, the photography business, my job on a daily basis is to connect with people. And so naturally, just the way that humans behave and think and act is just something that just makes me curious. And I just thought that this was just done really, really well.
Yeah.
And then not on that too, but like I could also understand, or living in the Bay Area too, I could see like.
Yeah, don't they live in don't they move to San Francisco? Or?
Moving right, exactly. They're moving into the Bay for a dad's taking a tech job, and dad's distracted. He's on his phone all the time. He's having to run out to meetings, and it really explained life in San Francisco, I thought, pretty well. It was pretty accurate.
That's cool.
Go check it out if you haven't seen it. One of the best movies. I've got 3 daughters at home, so we get to see. I love that about being a grown up, is that I have an excuse to go to the movies and go see all the Pixar movies that come out, and they've come so far now that it's just to a point where most of all of these movies are just really enjoyable for grown ups just as well as the kids. So
what an amazing testament to the filmmakers at Pixar and this movie, but almost all of their movies, where you can extract that much from it as an adult about the psychology of the children and everything that you said, and at the same time a 3-year-old can sit next to you and enjoy the hell out of it on their level, and it works on 2 levels. And if you're an adult, you get to enjoy both levels if you want. You can laugh at the silly elephant falling down, but also take away the heartwarming story. Inside Out, check it out. Point Break on your list, which I feel like I should be ashamed that I have not seen that. That is from 1990.
No, you're not missing anything.
No? It's one of your favorite movies, but
No.
you're not missing anything.
Yeah, I put this on the list because it had an impact on my life. It's almost embarrassing to say, but it kind of, in a way, conjured up my desires to move to California.
That's cool.
So the movie, in a way, had just more of an effect on me. It's been kind of like a little bit of a mantra. If there's ever been times where I've been down about living out here, because I've got family back in Maryland and that kind of stuff. This is one of those movies I can pop in and just feel good about being out in California. It's just a feel good movie. Keanu Reeves is terrible in it. But the movie has a lot of entertaining value. It was basically, this movie is, I feel, put the word adrenaline junkie onto the map. Because this is one of the first movies where it was surfing and it was skydiving and it was action packed and it was just fun. But it's not the best movie ever. I put it on my list just because it actually had an effect. It caused me to take some kind of action in a way.
That's great.
And and it's a classic. I mean, I can never get sick of watching it. But if you've never seen it, don't expect it to blow you away.
And they did a remake not that long ago, didn't they?
Yeah, and it was pretty lousy. It had some moments. The remake. I mean, the cinematography was, obviously with technology and stuff, like the sequences were really cool. As far as some of the action stuff. But it was almost like they purposely said, "Hey, let's go find an actor that's just bad as Keanu." Now, I don't want to suggest that Keanu Reeves is a bad actor. He was just lousy in Point Break.
Right, he has his ups and downs.
About him. I'm sure he's done some good stuff, or maybe he hasn't. I don't know. I'm not in any way trying to demean him, but he just was. He basically. I always got the impression that he got the script in the mail, and there was a synopsis at the top that said you're going to play an FBI agent that pretends to go undercover as like a surfer dude. The problem is that Keanu has the surfer dude like stoner kind of talk lingo.
Right.
He actually has that from the moment he starts the film. And it's before he's been given the assignment yet. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's just like, but that was directed by Catherine Bigelow, and and look at her career.
Nice.
Now. She's gone on to win some major awards
Right.
and stuff. So that probably falls more on her as a director than I'd say that it falls on him as an actor. That's just me.
They were all young in their careers at that point.
Absolutely, and the fact that they all still have careers is nothing short of a miracle. So.
And in Keanu's defense, when you come out of the gate with Bill and Ted, I mean, there's not much room to go up. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
well, yeah, but you know what? Actually, really, where I came to this conclusion about him was that one night, not that long ago, I saw him on a late night talk show, and I just assumed that he was going to come out talking like, "Hey, dude, what's
right.
up, bro?" But in real life, he actually talks very, very proper.
Sure.
He talks very articulated, and I was just like, oh, okay. Well, now like this whole thing where he was talking like the stoner surfer in the first scene of the movie, it just didn't make any sense. But
right.
I love the movie. It's not the greatest movie ever. It had a lot of impact on me. It was just a right time kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great.
Right when I was ready to get out and start exploring the world,
Right. I mean, that's one of the things I love about movies, and I love hearing from people is to one person, like Point Break, oh, that's stupid, that's garbage. To somebody else, one man's garbage is another man's treasure kind of thing. Like just
right.
It could mean a ton to you. I mean, I'm not joking when I say like Police Academy 3 means a lot to me from where I was in life and when I saw it and circumstances. So that's like a big movie with me. Like I said, I would go crazy if I met Steve Dutton.
Is that the one where they had to go to the zoo?
No, that was the end of number 2. Their first.
Okay.
That was their first assignment. Number 3 is where they go back in training, and pretty much reenact the first movie in a PG rated form. But anyway, yeah, that's just what I love. Like, and for me, if I'm feeling down and need like just a good companion,
sure,
any of the Police Academies. But number 3 is like saved for when you're really down in the dumps, and that'll bring me right out.
telling you, that's the magic of film. I tell people all the time, especially guys, hey, if you're really bummed out about your love life right now, or like you're having trouble finding love, watch the movie Swingers.
There you go.
And if you're somebody who really hates your job really bad, then go watch the movie Office Space.
I was going to say Office Space, yeah.
Got me through, both times when you're feeling turmoil in those departments.
The thing I love about Office Space is it does exactly what you said, but it does it for white collar people and blue collar people at the same time. Right. It's like it works on two levels. Like, yes, your office job sucks. Yes, working at TJ Hooligans or whatever it was called in the movie also sucks. Yeah, great movie.
As soon as you realize that you're not alone in your suffering, then life gets a little bit better.
Exactly. You don't have this list in front of you, do you, that you sent me? No.
But I can.
But I was just going to say, we're kind of pushing the time. Is there any that you definitely wanted to touch on? You had mentioned True
Romance.
Yeah.
Definitely, that's got to be one of my all-time favorite movies.
True Romance from 1993 with Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette.
That's right. This movie, because I noticed in a couple of your podcasts, you get a lot of Tarantino talk.
Yeah.
And I thought that talking about True Romance would be a little bit more. I didn't want to follow in those footsteps. Quentin Tarantino wrote this,
right?
But he didn't direct it, and supposedly he disowned it. Like he went on record to say that he thought the movie was shite. I don't know what that's about. I have a suspicion that maybe he didn't like the final edit.
Right.
Or
this was before. This was before Reservoir Dogs, or I
believe so.
From what my remembrance of this movie, because I worked at a video store when it came out, and it was already out, and it was really Pulp Fiction that made him the huge superstar, the force in the film industry. So he probably didn't have next to any pull as far as what's happening with this movie. Is he in it?
I don't think so.
Yeah, he just wrote it. Yeah, but then I remember the movie getting a lot of attention after it had already been out on video at the video store, because now it was like, he directed it, he wrote it.
Well, what I love about this movie is there's some things in there that people may or may not realize. But Gary Oldman plays a small part in this movie where I think he's got maybe 5 minutes of screen time total.
Right.
He plays a white, dreadlocked, gangster, pimp, who thinks that he's black, and his performance in this movie was, to this day, I would say that it's the best thing I've ever seen Gary Oldman do, and I think he's a great actor.
Yeah.
Everything that guy does, in my opinion, is amazing. But this performance, as short and as sweet as it is, just watch that scene alone, because his part in the movie is relatively close to the beginning. You could turn it off after that for all I care. You're all good. But there's a very small part in there of Sam Jackson, and then you said Christian
Slater
and Patricia Arquette.
Yeah.
There's a young James Gandolfini in this movie.
Yeah, when I was scrolling through the cast list on IMDb, it was like, oh my gosh, look at all these people in here.
Well, what people don't realize is that without this movie, there would have never been The Sopranos.
Okay.
James Gandolfini's performance in this as a mafioso gangster is the reason why Tony Soprano even exists.
Nice.
And it's the reason why James Gandolfini's career went off. James Gandolfini, in my opinion, was a very fine actor, and I was heartbroken when he passed.
Yeah.
And he has a very small part in this. And then there's also what's his name, Bronson Pinchot?
Balky from
Cousin Balky. he has a pretty good sized part in this movie too, which I thought you'd like, because I'm assuming that you're a fan of Perfect Strangers.
You would be wrong in that assumption, unfortunately.
Really?
I could never stand that show.
Interesting. That's funny.
But I like when Bronson Pinchot pops up in a movie, which he's in Beverly Hills Cop 2, which is also directed by this guy Tony Scott, who directed both of these. So they must be buddies.
Yeah, they must be buddies. And there's a young Brad Pitt in there too.
Right.
I'm not sure if you said that or not. He plays just the stoner roommate, and then Michael Rappaport, who's another more of an your actor that I kind of you kind of dig a little bit. It's just it falls in the lines of Snatch. It's fun. It's action packed. It's interesting. That scene with Gary Oldman, unbelievable. The scene with Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper is just like it'll give you goosebumps. Absolutely.
It's like a who's who of character actors too. So many great people in it.
There's just a lot of gems in this movie.
I thought it was interesting in the IMDb listing. It was Brad Pitt was listed fourth. I mean, obviously this is 93, so he wasn't quite huge yet. But Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette, Val Kilmer, and then Brad Pitt.
It's funny because Val Kilmer, his voice, his face, is never in focus. The whole movie, like you never get to actually see him. You can only know it's him because you can maybe slightly recognize his voice. Because in the movie he plays, so Christian Slater's character walks around with this with the voice of Elvis talking to him. Like Elvis is his voice of reason because he worships Elvis. So Val Kilmer plays Elvis. But it's only like a figment of his imagination, and they have some conversations, but never once do they ever put his face in focus.
Huh.
Which is interesting to see how high he ranks, on the casting list.
Right.
You wouldn't even know it was him if you just kind of didn't pay attention a little bit.
Nobody goes above Brad Pitt now. That's.
No, not at all. I'm pretty sure that this was right after he was coming off of Thelma.
Yeah.
He was still like just in that stage of his career.
And then I think Legends of the Fall is like 94, I think. So that was right behind it. Good stuff. So yeah, if you are a fan of Quentin Tarantino and you've only watched what he's directed, you want to check this out. If you're a fan of The Sopranos, this is also a good place to get some more goodness. And we only grazed your list, but that'll leave maybe perhaps a future episode when you're.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do this again. I was looking forward to doing this because you and I have been kicking around the idea of getting together and doing this.
Yeah.
I was under the impression it was going to happen like face to face.
Yeah. Well,
and then when you hit me up with it, I was just really excited. I was like, oh, definitely.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, we'll keep your list. Perhaps then we'll keep it on the down low for the next time we get together, and we'll do it face to face.
It's probably going to be different next time too, because things we changed.
Yeah. The other two on your list that I had seen were Dead Poets Society and Stand By Me, which coincidentally I saw both in high school. Like we had to, we watched them in school. So, but they're both great movies. Yeah, definitely.
Well, let me just touch on Dead Poets Society real quick. The reason why I love it so much, it brings a nostalgia to our times as teenagers when we were in high school. Robin Williams' character reminded me very much of a teacher that we had by the name of Mr. Kiesling.
Excellent, yeah.
And very, very Renaissance kind of guy. He was Mr. Kiesling was kind of known for being a little bit less regimented, considering that we'd gone to a parochial school.
Right.
It was a pretty liberal school to begin with, but Mr. Kiesling definitely would have fit that role as far as like a little bit of a rebel amongst the rest of the faculty.
Right.
And that movie, for whatever reason, I just watched that movie for the first time in like 20 years, not long ago, because I think it's streaming on HBO, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And the movie just moved me, and it just, oh man, like it's better now than it was then, like, as far as I'm concerned. And if there's any movie on this list that I would have to pick as a number one, it would definitely have to be Dead Poets.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been meaning to rewatch it. I haven't seen it since. I've seen it more than once, but I haven't seen it since our high school years. But yeah, we watched it at watch it
again. It holds up.
We watched it on a retreat our senior year when we went away for a couple of nights and did whatever we did at a retreat. But that was one of the things we did was watch Dead Poets Society. And I remember, and not to give anything away, but the movie's been out for 30-some years, guys, so you should have seen it by now. Somebody kills himself and the dad walks in, and just the scream from that dad, like the horror of him finding it, haunts me to this day. Honestly, it's and
then you tie that in with the fate of Robin Williams too.
Yeah, I never thought of that. Jeez.
It's a very full circle. circle kind of thing. It gives you a lot to chew on mentally. There's a lot to think about in there.
Really solid movie. So, and for people who only know Robin Williams as, Whirr and Mrs. Doubtfire and stuff, you'll see another side of him that he showed a lot. He did a lot of seriouser films. So, yeah, guys, thanks for joining us on the show, and catch some of those movies, and we will see you next time on What's Your Favorite Movie. Remember to follow us on Twitter at WYF Movie Podcast, or you can follow me at Ed South. Until next time, it's Khaki Wishes and Cookie Dreams. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Ed.